Nathaniel, thank you so much for tuning in here with us today.
Hey everybody, it's really great to be here. I'm super excited.
Nathaniel, for context for everyone, is the creator and founder of a company called Pickaxe, which helps you create no-code AI tools. And they've combined a lot of the different things that have slowed a lot of people down from building and monetizing their own knowledge and expertise and created a super simple and easy to use platform that you can use to either give people free access to your tools or gate it with paid access. And there's been a lot of big updates over the past few weeks that Pickaxe has come out with and that Nathaniel is going to be sharing with us. And so, welcome aboard, Nathaniel. The stage is yours.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I guess for maybe I'll just give the basic explanation for folks. I think Darby said it really well. If you're out there and you're building, what maybe you might call GPTs or agents or chatbots across a really wide variety of contexts, people we find they run into the same kind of problems again and again. They built this thing and it works well, but they can't put it where they need to put it. They can't really control access to it. They can't really see what people are doing with these tools. And so we built Pickaxe to kind of address that, particularly for like coaches and consultants, people who are working with educational institutions, working with Fortune 500 companies, working with small businesses, working with individual folks that are getting coaching assistance or even like therapeutic assistance. What you want is the ability to build these bots and put them into a box where you can brand it, control access. And so that's really what Pickaxe is all about. So I might just give like a 10,000 foot overview of how to use Pickaxe and kind of the different angles, but then we can get into some of the really cool new stuff that we've released recently. Because really our goal is just to be the platform that allows folks that are trying to monetize GPTs in one way or another to do that effectively. Like literally any way you can spin that, we're there trying to provide a solution.
Love it. Yeah,
Um,
let's do that.
yeah. So you would start with our GPT builder, which for those of you that have built one in OpenAI's system, this looks quite similar. You've got your prompt engineering area where you're putting in your role and you're describing what you want your tool to do. You've got your knowledge base where you're uploading all the documentation that you might have or that you might be adding on behalf of your clients. Um, and you've got like action connections, which includes MCPs and other things that you might want to connect. For those of you who maybe haven't gotten, I don't know if you guys have already talked today or in this program about MCPs, but super cool new framework for allowing your AI tools to kind of connect with lots of different other tools out there without having to like set up this kind of annoying and complicated API integration. Instead, you kind of just click a button and it just can do whatever you need it to do across, for example, Notion or Google Drive. It can add, remove, edit files. So this is kind of where you would set up your AI tools. And we have like tens of thousands of folks that have built awesome tools in this builder. Um, but then kind of the place where Pickaxe I think gets really interesting is here where you can start to kind of first of all deploy your tools as embeds if you want to. Let's say you already have a course platform that you're using, or if you're consulting, maybe you already have like a LMS or another platform that you're using to kind of like manage that consulting. You can embed these tools right in there, so you can kind of AIify your courses really within 5 minutes. And customize these embeds, really make them look the way that you need them to look for your business. And actually, one of the new features that we've recently rolled out that I'm super excited about, I don't think anybody else has this. I've never seen this anywhere else on the internet, is the ability to ask people to log into your embeds. And once people do that, even if they're on some other platform you're using, you'll have like the ability to kind of see who's doing what, limit usage based on who the user is, take away usage from folks based on who the user is. All this stuff that you probably really need to do if you want to take it seriously, adding AI to your existing consulting practice or spinning up a new kind of coach consulting practice using AI, you probably need to know who's using the tools and how much they're using them. So that's super exciting. And then the other big thing with Pickaxe is you can set up these things we call them studios, but essentially it's like a little website where we'll handle everything for you. So literally with the click of a button in about 10 minutes, you can go from building tools. In this case, I built a little murder mystery manor with a bunch of characters, each of which kind of help folks solve a mystery. But included within this, at the click of a button, is authentication so that folks can sign up, sign in. You can grab their emails, understand what's happening with your customers better. And then, even if you need it, uh, payments where you can have them potentially buy um, upgrades, get access to more tools, uh, and limit them via credits so that you can kind of restrict usage. Um, all really just built right into the platform. So if you're trying to create a situation where you want to monetize access to agents, really this is like the one-click solution, going from building to deploying these things into a branded environment where this is a completely customizable environment here, and then kind of getting them to your customers. You can even put these custom domains and really make it your own and make it part of your site. So that's kind of the high level overview of Pickaxe. I wonder if I can answer any questions, or I might just go into a couple of cool use cases we've seen, and even as to answer your question from earlier, Darby, talking about what we've seen in education and what we're starting to see with people using the tool.
Yeah, I'd love to like at some point in this conversation talk a bit more about the practical ways that you have seen other pickaxes use MCP, because that was a newer addition that it was something I was trying to figure out how to get APIs to make it work before, and I just wasn't able to make it click. And so I'd love to see like how that is being utilized in some studios. Also, in my own experience with some of our partners, we've figured out how to connect Pickaxe with a make.com automation in Zapier to, export new studio signups to a CRM. And in that case, it's go high level. But there's a lot that you can do with this as a hub for people that are using the actual tool to get that to communicate with your other platforms, which I think is something that is still kind of like discombobulated with some of these other platforms, because you're tying a lot of different tools together. And so we see an example here from John. So everyone, please drop your questions in the comments. And if you're watching this on YouTube, drop your questions in the YouTube channel. Would love to answer them. If not on this session, then another summit session or inside of the comments. But John also mentions I use Gumloop to do automations, but cannot gate it. Could I embed a flow like that or an N8N into Pickaxe? That's a great question,
Uh,
John.
yeah, that is a great question, and we see a lot of that with Pickaxe. You can build a lot of complex automations, but we don't subscribe to like the idea that we want to support you to build these really complex automation flows, because a lot of our customers will use a tool like Gumloop, or they'll use a tool like N8N, or like Zapier, or like Make. And it's very easy. You can kind of just think of this bot as being like the face of your automation, you know? Even if it's just as simple as clicking a button, you can think of it as like, you say start and it kicks off the automation. And then, you can connect to Make, Zapier. We have integrations for Gumloop and N8N. And it's really just easy to set up that connection. And once you've got that, you can gate the automation from here and essentially sell access to the automation through Pickaxe. And, it kind of can look as if you're kind of just creating your own little ChatGPT with your different bots here, but in reality, each of these could connect to a different automation under the hood. And they could be quite complex automations that do like really involved things for your customers. And you're kind of just selling access to them through Pickaxe by connecting them with this action section. So that's definitely something that we see folks doing to great success. And maybe Darby, to kind of like double down on your question, we're kind of advising people to use Smithery, but there's a lot of other MCP aggregators out there. And you ask for like a good like MCP use case. Well, one thing that I've done at least myself, not to mention all the things our awesome customers are getting up to, is use this Notion MCP that Smithery has here. And it's very easy to just get this set up. Like it's just a couple of clicks. And then you
Yeah, could
connect
you
that to
show
Pick.
us? Could you show us
Oh,
how to like do a setup? Are you able
yeah,
to?
totally. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, yeah. Let's do it. Okay, so here we're in Pickaxe. We want to connect this MCP server. So we'll do add MCP server. We're gonna get the URL. Actually, I think we can just do it like this. And so in this case, we'll go to the Notion integrations area, which is pretty much just a click through authentication process here. Let's see if it'll bring
And
it up for
Smithery,
me.
for clarification, is kind of like a bridge between some of these other platforms for authentication and kind of helping with like making these MCP connections.
Exactly. Yeah. That just brought me over here and I just had it add a new one. And then I've got this key here, which I won't show, but it took me like 2 clicks to get this.
Hmm.
And then I'm just going to stick that in Smithery and click connect. And it gives me this stuff, which doesn't matter really, but I've got it.
Well,
Great. Now I just paste that in here.
so it's writing the JSON code from like all the API and the documentation that you need from Notion to connect through Smithery that you could just copy and paste now to create a new MCP server in your Pickaxe that it's going to talk.
Exactly. And so now this has access because I added the API key to Smithery. Smithery's hosting this MCP server. There's a lot of other tools that can host the MCP server, but Smithery's one that we found has a lot of good tools already like kind of connected. And now I've got this Notion MCP connected. So if I can say like, you know, what can you tell me about Pickaxe pricing from Notion? Um, it should. Actually, I think I need to do one more step, which is click the connect button. I've now added it, but now I need to connect it. And now we go like this. Let's do one more time. It might have taken a minute here from Notion MCP.
So you're asking it this question because in theory, the Notion that you set up has all the context about your pricing on it. So it's kind of like pulling reference from that as a knowledge source.
Exactly, exactly. Let me just actually just name this tool and publish it. Notion Searcher. And just publish it. And let's actually upgrade this model to something a bit nicer.
So some of the use case here, and I've seen people talking about how can I update like my knowledge base that my GPT is referencing. That's like all I need to do is update the Notion document in this case, and then the Pickaxe should be communicating with the most active versus another use for doing that would have to go download all the information, then re-upload it into the knowledge base. When this is another way to grab that knowledge, it's more up to date.
Exactly. And if you see this like shimmering effect, that means that it is going and grabbing the information properly. One moment, let me just look over here. So it's maybe it takes a minute here, but yeah, we find that people are using all kinds of different creative solutions for knowledge base than just what people you know were using before because they have access to these MCPs. So people are putting like in Airtable, in Notion, in Google Drive, they'll have a sheet or even like a series of files that contain different pieces of information about what's going on that then these MCPs can kind of search through. So in this case, we kind of just gave it like the most basic possible 1 minute setup. So it has to go through and find this stuff, but we could tell it later, like, hey, I want you to go to the pricing page and find this stuff behind the scenes so we don't show that process to the user. In this case, it's showing us what it's doing.
And this is a very quick example of like one way to set up the MCP, but inside of the instructions where you can put prompts, you can be incredibly specific about how you want these tools to work and provide specific keywords so that you know when you say this, this will happen and trigger different actions. And so I'm curious with this question aligning with
Exactly.
Bruce asking, as MCPs become more universally available, will tools like Smithery, MCP Hub aggregators replace the need for tools like Zapier and Make? Do you have like an opinion on that, Nathaniel, or do you see them working together still?
Well, it's a really good question. I think Make has really taken the world by storm a little bit, and I guess N8N as well. Zapier seems to be okay. So it has grabbed this information. Took a little while, but it has grabbed this information about pricing from our Notion. Um, and it's also telling us some maybe unneeded, unwanted information about the way that our Notion is structured. So in our prompt, we might give it a little bit more instruction on exactly what we want it to talk about to our users and what we don't. But we've seen Make and N8N adopting the MCP wave so quickly. And Zapier's kind of tagging along and from behind. So I'm honestly not sure whether aggregators like Smithery will team up with them. Maybe there'll be an acquisition. Um, I think that the other thing is it's a lot easier to host an MCP server than it is to like build an integration um, in the past because a lot of these are open source. So you just might end up in a solution where instead of having to use solutions like Zapier and Make and all these other guys, you kind of can just do a lot of this yourself, or there's a platform that makes it really easy for you to just host these things alongside what you're doing. Like with Pickaxe, we host some of our own MCP connections here, like Google Semantic Scholar, OpenAI Web Search, sequential thinking, and we're adding to this every day. Here's a Google Sheets one. So, you know, it's really easy for folks to set up those connections. So I'm really excited because what it's going to mean is it's going to mean that everything is just so interconnected. Your tools can just really talk to all the other pieces of data that they need to and get what they need to get done.
Yeah.
And you ask, do MCPs work more slowly than direct APIs because of the extra layer of reasoning involved? They do work more slowly than direct APIs for sure. And but you know, it can be a benefit as well because what it just did there, this process that we just saw under the hood is actually making a series of API requests and processing what it got back, realizing that maybe it wasn't done yet, and going out and grabbing another bit of information. So this would have been like a lot of work for somebody to set up themselves. Like most of our customers, you can set up the manual API connection. We have a little area where you can code and add your Python code to set up like a series of API connections if you want to. But like that would be too much for a lot of our users, and this just makes it super easy. Now it is slower, but if I was to go into this prompt area and say like, you know, always go, you know, directly to the pricing page in my Notion, and you know, don't search further, and a couple of basic like components of the prompt here, then you can start to reduce the amount of time that it's going to take and make it more just like a regular API call. And also you can customize kind of what these loading states say, which can be nice because honestly, people expect to wait a little bit if it's going to go do some complicated thing. Just using the prompts. Yeah. So that's kind of an example of the power of, well, really this is, I mean, we're trying to talk up Pickaxe. I love Pickaxe. I recommend you give it try to Pickaxe because we try to really make this easy for folks. But just in general, you know, if you are finding yourself scratching your head over complicated API integrations, checking out MCPs and just playing around with them, that's, I think, the technology of the next 5 years. So find a place, either Pickaxe or elsewhere, where you can experiment with them.
Yeah, that's great. And we've been talking about MCP since kind of the last summit. It's come on our radar a bit more and learning how to use it. And like a lot of the technology in this space, it's still like relatively young. But at the end of the day, I see MCP sticking around as well as a way for these tools and these platforms to just communicate better with each other. And and one of the cool things like with an interface like Pickaxe, and again, like I would encourage you guys to check it out if you haven't like tried it yet. If you see value in gating your own knowledge or you're trying to monetize these types of workflows, like Pickaxe will help make a lot of that process a little bit easier. There may or may not be other tools that can do something similar out there. But specifically with Pickaxe, one thing I really appreciate is that you can also set like like user memory and different like settings that like give you more ability to engage with or understand what people are going through so you can improve the bot also. Because a lot of people that I see using it are doing it on like a coaching side where they have a really specific series of prompts that guide somebody from like one end, start of the conversation all the way to the end of it. Sometimes you're working with people actively throughout this process and helping them refining them. So can you talk a little bit more about what's going on behind the scenes in a studio? And we can get into some more like the pricing and how some other stuff works. So if you guys have your questions here, but um, there's a lot that you can do and see and work with your own students or your own clients that are working inside of here.
Yeah, I'm happy to go through this a little bit because in our goal to be like the best one-click easy way to monetize these GPTs, once you start getting them together into like a studio like this, where you've got accounts and you've got monetization, there's a lot of other really cool stuff that you can start to pull out. And Darby, as you were mentioning, user memory is one of them. So not only can you kind of have full view over what kind of conversations are happening, where we can go in here and look at for I'm just using the murder mystery as an example here, but what people are talking about, who they are, we can go and look at other conversations that this person has had. We can get a summary of who the AI thinks this user is. So in this case, it's pretty tied to the murder mystery, but let's say that you were doing like a coaching solution. This summary might be looking at all the conversations and determining, oh, I think this person is running X type of business. And you can export all of these to the CRM of your choice or view them in Pickaxe, which can be nice. You can also control this user memory ability, which is much like if you guys have used ChatGPT, you know that it collects memories about you. But the thing about ChatGPT is it just kind of collects whatever it feels like. It'll just be like, okay, I think this is a good thing to remember about this person. And there's really no control that you have over what it remembers and what it doesn't. Um, Unless maybe you tell it like, hey, remember this. In Pickaxe, if you have like a coaching solution, you've got a bunch of GPTs, you can decide what things it remembers about your users, and you can decide um, you can decide exactly which like how you wanted to show that to the user or whether you wanted to show that to the user at all. So for example, here I've got a user's name and I'm having it collect and use that information. So if the user ever does say their name, it will collect that information, and every time there's a new chat, it will say, "Oh, hey John, like how's it going?" That's a very basic one. But here I've also got the suspected culprit, who they think did it. And I've got this set to collect, use, and display, which actually is a choice that I can make that allows an end user of my tool, somebody that's just using it themselves, to see uh, for themselves their own memories here and potentially edit or delete them. So this is super important if you've got like a lot of things you want your tool to remember about your customers, but maybe you want them to be able to go in and see what information the tool has collected about them. You can easily do that through Pickaxe. And I guess one thing that actually we see a lot of folks use that I really like is the option of just collecting. Because what this is, let's say that, I'm doing a therapy solution and I wanted to, make an assessment of the user's mental state. For example, um, every time they talk to the bot. Well, I can just set this to collect and I can kind of configure this to be about mental state. And it will just collect these and it will not use them, you know, in conversation with the user, but I can see them as the owner of this tool. So that's really helpful for me because, let's say that the user's mental state is bad one day. We probably don't want it to like remember that John always has a bad mental state and then like constantly remind them every time that it talks to the bot. But we want to have a record. We want to see, oh, when I click on John, I see that, he's having a hard time. Um, and, so that's, I'm using this therapy example, but we're seeing people like who are embedding these tools on their website for lead gen. And to the user, it just looks like it's a, regular AI conversation they're having with some kind of directed GPT that's answering a question for them. But behind the scenes, it's collecting all kinds of really rich information about like, you know, what this customer's ICP is, what this customer's like likely buying trajectory might look like if we have a course and we're trying to sell it to them, or if we have consulting service and we're trying to sell it to them, what this customer's like key problems are. So we can basically set up our bots to like record this information behind the scenes and use that to better understand our customers. So it's one of the reasons why I think the user memory kind of area is just like, this is really just the tip of the iceberg of what we want to do. But the goal is to make it so that kind of behind the scenes of these suites of GPTs that you can build, you can really just build these really rich tapestries of customer information and understand your customers better than you ever have before. Maybe I can move over to John Gallagher's question and answer some questions about monetization and access limiting.
Yeah.
Um, just it's a super interesting area. Pickaxe lets you basically just do this in one, well, it's not actually one click, but it's in about 10 minutes with this integration to Stripe. You can just go through, click through, and set it up. And it's really nice. Pickaxe allows you to monetize your tools in a bunch of different ways, but um, it depends on like who you're selling to. So you can set up, for example, what I've set up here is if you're a guest, you're coming in without an email address, you're just free off the street, no email address, not giving us any information, you get 5 uses of my tools. Then if you give me your email address, you become a member. Now you get 50 uses. Then if you give me $2 a month, which for me, not that much, this is mostly just a demo studio for me, you get unlimited uses and you get access to Evil Wadsworth the Butler in this case. But we have customers that are charging literally thousands of dollars a month through us for usage of their GPTs. And it really just depends on who your customers are, but you can set these access restrictions up so fast. And your users can go through, purchase these things, and you get paid out. John asked if Pickaxe charged a percent of revenue. So we do. It depends on your usage tier. We charge between 10 and 8% cut if you monetize through us. But one important thing to note is that, that's basically just if you're using our Stripe integration here, which like is really useful if you're, for example, using this as lead gen. This is near the top of your funnel. You're a coach and you're selling this to like individual folks. But we also have a ton of customers that are B2B. And they're doing like multi-thousand-dollar consulting engagements. And for them, we're not going to take that cut because they're not going to monetize through us, which is totally okay. You can set this to invite only very easily. And then you can go over to users and you can add users who have paid you like through a different channel. So like, let's say that you are working with this big petroleum company and you have a contract with them. You need to make sure that everybody there has access to your tool. You can just invite them all. So this is, the goal with Pickaxe is to be this like ultimate management solution for managing all the people that are using your GPTs, making sure the people who you want to have access, people who you don't want to have access, you can cut that access out. And so like, it just depends who you're marketing to and who you're selling to, but you definitely don't have to monetize through us to make money with Pickaxe. We see a lot of different ways of doing it. And in addition, as Darby was mentioning, they're setting up their Go High Level with an integration through to Pickaxe, right? And it depends exactly what direction you want to go, but you can also just automatically give people access to your tools if they've gone and signed up or paid through this other system. So we do take the cut, and you are welcome to give us that cut because it is by far like literally 10 minutes easy to set up and get out there and get monetizing if you do it through our Stripe integration. But if you're feeling like, oh, I don't want to pay this cut, you just need to spend a little bit more time, and you can kind of monetize in other ways depending on who your customers are.
Yeah, I mean, like there's a few ways to go about it, and like you said, like from the ease of getting it up and running to working with like larger clients that you may be invoicing completely separately, and then this is a way to give them access to the tools that are part of your service. You know, multiple ways to get people inside the studio. I'm curious from a security perspective, if you can touch on a little bit about like kind of maybe some of the security and the protocols that you guys have built into Pickaxe, because obviously that's a question that larger companies tend to have is like, okay, what's happening with our information? Where's it being stored? And is it safe and secure? Which I'm sure you've got that question before, but something I think is worthwhile of just touching on here for those that are looking to bring in clients that may be potentially sharing data that might be considered sensitive.
Totally. Yeah. I think that when people are kind of moving from other platforms to Pickaxe or from other solutions to Pickaxe, this is like a big problem that we solve. Um, let's say that in the past you were like letting people use your custom GPTs. Um, well, OpenAI has some like pretty interesting rules about what data they'll train on and what data they won't train on, and what the actual data privacy kind of situation is if you're just sharing access to the GPT link on OpenAI's site. And now with Pickaxe, you have the opportunity to kind of put this in your own brand, which means you get to, but also you have the responsibility to have your own data privacy policy, your own rules. You got to assure your customers, hey, this is legit. Uh, so we kind of help folks with that across a variety of you know applications. But with Pickaxe, we are GDPR compliant, we're CCPA compliant. We're in the middle of our SOC 2 right now, so I guess we can say like SOC 2 in progress. Um, and your data is encrypted at rest and in transit, and we provide a lot of functionality for you to control on behalf of your users what you can see, what they can see. They can delete their own accounts, which is really important. They can delete their own individual chats, which is important. You can delete their chats. You can also go into the settings and turn off history collection altogether. And if this is off, while this is off, you won't see all of those chats, which can be really useful if you're doing like a therapy use case where maybe you don't want to see the actual verbatim chats because there's some liability involved there. And then in our terms, which you don't have to go through and read all the terms, but and actually we're about to publish a video kind of doing a high level of this, but we also try to help folks understand the different rules with all the different model providers. Because if you're using OpenAI on ChatGPT, they have one set of rules about training. But if you're using OpenAI through the API, and through Pickaxe, they have a different set of rules about training. So OpenAI has a 30-day deletion guarantee for data. XAI has a 30-day deletion guarantee. We kind of go through and show you here like what are the different model providers considerations. Because for example, actually, I didn't realize this until recently, but at least from what we were able to find through our research, DeepSeek through the API even is not agreeing not to train. At least from what we were able to find. So, pretty much every other model provider agrees not to train through the API, except for DeepSeek. So, we kind of provide this type of advice to our customers. We try to help them be compliant. And I guess the final thing to mention on that is if you do have a big client, many times we've gotten on the phone with them. We're very responsive. We have gone through audits with Fortune 500 companies on behalf of clients of Pickaxe who want to use Pickaxe in these like big enterprise deployments. So, we're an open book. We're here to help, especially if you're working with a large customer. That's really cool for us too. So feel free to reach out.
Thank you. And we have a few other questions on this similar note. I'll start with John's first. Can I bring my own private LLM? Because I know you can bring your own API keys for the different models, but any clients that like bring an LLM into the equation that isn't natively like integrated?
Yeah, so you can bring your own API keys. We do have a couple of clients who bring their own LLMs. That's more on what I would call, we have a couple of enterprise customers that do that. So if you have a use case that requires bringing your own LLM, you should jump on and we're happy to talk through it. The reason why we don't make it quite as easy is because usually if you are bringing your own LLM, it's because you really want it to be like on-prem, and Pickaxe runs in the cloud anyway. So you kind of like lose that on-prem ability by default. But we do have two customers actually who are like larger enterprise organizations that want their own LLM. And in fact, for one of them, we actually helped them develop that fine-tuned LLM based on more than 100,000 exchanges they had already had on Pickaxe with OpenAI's LLMs. So they had all these exchanges. They're all recorded in Pickaxe, and then they were able to use those to train their own LLM, which was honestly a super cool use case that I'm not sure if we'll see more of, but we might see more of. Um, yeah. And I see Grant has a question. Application development. Does Pickaxe allow open APIs for workflow development similar to N8N? I'm not exactly sure what this means. Um, maybe we could get a little bit more color on that.
Grant, if you maybe want to shed a little bit more context, even come off mute and share a little bit more about what you mean. Because I know inside of the studios you can access like the API and do certain things with it that you can create like webhooks and like integrate directly with N8N, Zapier, Make.com. But if you're
Yeah.
meaning anything more specific than that, let us know, Grant.
Yeah. At a high level, the answer is Pickaxe is very API positive. We try to make it so that you can really do almost anything via the API, including, the ability to set up webhooks for certain key actions. So, but at the same time, we're kind of fighting, admittedly, we're fighting to make it so that people don't have to use the API because honestly, sometimes API setups can be kind of confusing. So we're working more in the MCP space. We're working more in just setting up the manual integrations where we can because we don't want to overly confuse people with the API integrations if they're not already kind of technical and up on that. Yeah. Uh, so we've talked about basically the two big ways to deploy Pickaxe that we're seeing are into this studio, which is like a standalone website that is really easy to spin up. You can monetize, you can have accounts, all this good stuff. And then also you can just create an embed and put this embed on another platform that you're using. And finally, like have access to the chat history so that people can see what they've done in the past. And uh, also the ability to kind of tie user memory so that if a user is using even multiple different embeds on your site across your site, you can kind of build that picture of them using the user memory. Um, I guess, oh, is this link timing out? This link works for me. I just clicked
Okay.
it.
Yeah, so
Uh,
I just share a link. It'll be below this video wherever you're watching it on YouTube. But if you go through our link, it just wasn't opening on my end for some reason. 10% off your first 3 months or 10% off your whole year when you go annual. That was, Nathan and I connected before the summit. We got that all set up for you guys here at GenAI University who want to go and test it out, get a sweet discount on applied to your account. Obviously, if it doesn't work for you, you can cancel your account. But if you're part of our community, we're going to continue to do more trainings around Pickaxe and demonstrations, and of course, happy to answer your questions in between the summits to support you in what you're building. I, for one, was really excited to hear when the MCP was coming out, and I'm looking forward to testing out a few different workflows where that's going to be, um, useful. One of the examples that came up in our mastermind months before the MCP was announced with Pickaxe was around a frustration with not being able to have like a GPT and Chat GPT automatically update whenever you update like a Google document from your knowledge base. And so you'd constantly have to go in and download it back into the knowledge base, and it would just be a little time consuming. But there wasn't we weren't able to find like an easy workaround for it. And so similarly to how you demonstrated Notion, I'm curious, is that like another application for it if you had like one Google document that you want to have an MCP built for that a Pickaxe could interact with, have that Google document be updated on a regular basis, and then have whoever's interacting with the Pickaxe get the latest version of that document. Like just every time it's updated in the cloud, the Pickaxe would have updated to the latest version.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's actually why we have this Google Sheets MCP like noted right here. And um, a very common use case we see for folks is that they'll have like a sometimes a document, but oftentimes a Google Sheet or something, but also sometimes a Google document that's being updated, and they want the pickaxe to be able to pull from that over time. And also sometimes they'll have like a separate document that it's writing to. And then every week or whatever, they'll go in and they'll look at what it's written to, and they'll say, "Oh, huh, like, people are asking about this and I don't have any answers. Let me actually go find some answers to these questions and go and stick them in my other documents." So we're trying to make those flows even easier, and for some of them, you can do them right in Pickaxe. But we see that all the time. And, our goal is just to kind of be a flexible crucible for all these different workflows, where we kind of provide this easy to use, no code, visual layer, where you can do the access limiting and the user management and all this important stuff. It's kind of like the last mile stuff that is kind of difficult to do with some of these other platforms. One thing I just did want to highlight real quick actually is an unreleased feature that I have access to here that I'll just show to folks here. We're getting really excited to release this soon, um, probably early next week. So something for you guys to get excited about. I've talked about embeds. I've talked about the ability to use the studio. You can also deploy these tools as APIs, which can be helpful. But newly, we're going to be allowing you to deploy these tools as SMS, so that you can basically have a phone number for your tool, and people will text in and basically be chatting back and forth with the GPT. And just like with everything else on Pickaxe, it works exactly the same way. You've got a usage limit. You can then encourage people to upgrade, encourage people to even pay through Stripe, and come right back to having that SMS conversation on their phone. So all of a sudden, these GPTs are kind of coming out of the websites that they've been living on and into SMS, and then the next thing we're going to do is WhatsApp. And I'm just super excited because I've literally been texting back and forth with my pickaxes all weekend, or all of this past week. It's already Thursday. um, and I think this is really going to blow up the like opportunities to monetize, because now like these tools can hit people without them even having to open a browser.
I mean, that's super exciting to me, and I didn't know that this was going to be something that was coming up. This is the first time I'm hearing about it, guys. I have tested and experimented with setting up like WhatsApp agents that could do some of this stuff, and there's like a lot of configuration that goes into setting up your own WhatsApp chatbot. It can certainly be done, and there's a lot of more technical savvy people that I know that have built their own versions of these agents. This is going to make that so much easier. And I want to clarify for an example of how I would use this pretty much immediately. If I could connect like SMS with a number, so I could just text my pickaxe bot, let's call it Moxie, because that's what I call my, AI operating assistant. But if I have my Moxie pickaxe with an MCP to my Slack channel and then to my other resources, would I be able to text it and say, hey, can you check recent DMs or at mentions to me in my Slack channel? And through the SMS, if it's connected with my Slack via like MCP, would it be able to like identify messages and then relay those to me and then be able to like correspond with me back and forth? I just want to make sure I'm understanding like one workflow
Yeah,
for it. Okay.
absolutely. Like I love, Darby, your question because it pulls together basically all the things we've talked about today. But if you've got the MCP set up through Slack, that can write and read and search, which is really cool. So you'll be able to just talk to your bot, ask it exactly those questions you're mentioning, and if it's set up through SMS, all the MCPs, all that power that we've been packing into the web version of Pickaxe is going to be available there as well. So actually, it's funny because I haven't been using it for our Slack yet, though, Darby, I think that's an inspiring idea. But I do have it set up to correspond with our community. We've got a really great community. We've got a lot of stuff going on, and I've been
Mhm.
basically like using um, a tool that like connects me to what's going on there, and I can get updates and even post responses all from this tool. So that's been a lot of fun. It's a little slow, if I'm going to be
Mhm.
honest, but um, it's been very fun to do. Uh, yeah.
That's really cool. And I think like it's just inspiring to see with the direction of how I believe a lot of the agentic like interactions and interfaces are going is it's great that it's on the web. Everybody has a phone. Everybody texts. Like WhatsApp's like one of the most used apps in the world. That's how most of the world communicates, especially outside of the US. um, Being able to engage directly with your own AI super assistant that you can also customize, or you can create assistants for your clients so that they can access information in a way that's going to make it even easier is a big win because it removes friction from me having like to go and communicate and jump between all these different platforms, which is again like why we want to connect it with these different knowledge bases, these different communication platforms. And, this is where like I encourage everyone who is watching this right now and looking at what platform should I use or what tool is going to be here, like consider like what you just watched and what you're going to be capable to do with Pickaxe. But more importantly, spend the time if you haven't already to just map out on a one-page piece of paper or document what tools are you already using and getting kind of like set and prepared for like, okay, I need to get an MCP set up for Notion. Okay, I need to get a Slack MCP. Or, make sure that you have that organized and that you're not like missing anything in your core workflow. Because then when it comes time to like going and setting one of these up for yourself, you already have done a lot of that work. And um, this type of interface will make it a lot more simple to interact and engage with the AI, especially knowing that SMS is coming and that WhatsApp is coming, I think is so cool. But if you don't have a clear idea about like all the different platforms that you're using in your workflow, you might not be able to fully capitalize and leverage what this tech can do um, if your organization's not mapped out. A lot of you probably already have a lot of that mapped out, but if you haven't like got a more refreshed version of it, now would be a great time to just spend an hour putting all of that together, jotting it all down so that you're able to really knock everything out and then get locked in once the next update comes into place. And then you want your, just like a human assistant, you're not going to tell your human assistant to go and do all this stuff. And then they're like, well, I don't have access to your Drive or your Notion or your Slack. You just told me go do all this stuff, but now I need all the logins and I need the certain access, right? You have to think through all those specific things that somebody else needs. In this case, it's going to be an AI assistant that could also more than likely support your team at that much as well. So really cool stuff, Nathaniel.
We find that it's good to start small. Like oftentimes people will jump onto the platform and just set up something really simple, and then they'll be calling us the next day and be like, "Okay, this works so well. Now I want to connect it to this, and I want to do this other thing with it." And it's just so exciting because really, like, you can't know how cool and how easy it will be until you give it a try. And then once you try it for one self-contained thing, that's when the ideas really start to spark. So I would just recommend just jumping on there and giving it a try. We had a conversation yesterday, just connected to we can finally circle back to the AI and education conversation that you guys just had. We had a conversation yesterday with a major university about how they want to sign a deal with us to allow all of their professors to use Pickaxe in the classroom for their students. And the impetus to this, like, was really just a professor, using this in one classroom for one very specific type of assignments. And then this one professor kind of started using it for all kinds of other stuff, and then started sharing it with the other professors at the school. And now the school is contacting us and saying, "Hey, it looks like we have enough people using this that we want to get involved with a bigger deal." But it really just started from like one person with one small idea, and now they want to use it for a ton of different stuff. So I'm hoping that that will happen more often, and I just think that like if you guys can be the ones that kind of are the ones having that idea and proliferating that technology, you're just making everybody and your clients, everybody that you work with more powerful.
Yeah, and so much of it starts with just one simple use case. What's one workflow or one outcome or one thing that you're already doing that maybe if you could save a little bit of time or do it a little bit faster, um, it would help you a lot in what you're doing on the day to day. And so that could be different for everyone, but once you find those use cases, there's probably other people, your clients, your customers, your community that will also, benefit from learning what that looks like. And, again, that's why we host community events. That's why we host the Scale with AI Summit, because there's always new advancements to this technology, and especially in AI, right? Like there's always new something shiny coming out, but I love to connect with people like you, Nathaniel, who are building the platforms that other people can use too, because you have a different perspective that you can share and how people can connect the dots and really see value from these tools in a really practical way. So thanks for coming on and sharing with us. And again, for those of you here, go ahead and check out Pickaxe. There's a link right around wherever this video is going to be posted, where you can get a sweet deal, 10% off your first 3 months or 10% off your first year. And thanks so much, Nathaniel. The other
Thank you guys.
side.